The Mike Mullings had a picnic today. The Mullings and their guests have a couple of things in common. The men all served in Vietnam, and each family feels it is suffering from part of Nam. The government admitted last year that many more GIs were exposed to the defoliating agent orange than first reported. Until recently, the VA's main thrust has been to conduct a lengthy study and to register potential exposures and symptoms. But now Congress has opened the door for direct treatment. Oklahoma has been in the front among states getting involved on the state level, but these vets and their families are frustrated by symptoms and medical bills.
Our children are in trouble, we're in trouble. We all run about $15,000 in medical bills, and there's a lot of veterans that are on the point of doing things violent.
These veterans have just received a charter to take over the Bethany chapter of the Disabled American Veterans, but they feel there's a disabling effect on their families too.
What about my kids and their kids? And we need to start doing something. I know with me it's about over with me. I'm 36 years old, and 75 about the longest I'll probably live, maybe 80,
The war that I watched on television while I ate dinner in high school is going to affect the rest of my life permanently.
Mike and Teese Mullings have 5 children, all born after his days in the war.
All 5 of them have psychomotor seizures. They usually don't manifest the seizures until after they turn 2 years old. They have all had grand mal seizures at one time or another.
In a few weeks, the State Health Department will begin a detailed study of potential Agent Orange veterans living in Oklahoma, estimated at up to 60,000 or more. That, too, will take time. And time is something these people hope won't run out. George Tomic, Action 4 in Bethany.
The Oklahoma State Fair makes a lot of money, but it also costs a lot of money to operate the facility. City leaders must decide whether or not the fair's profits should automatically go back into the fair for improvements. That's what the Fairboard has proposed in a new contract. The city normally does give the profit right back to the fair, but one city councilman feels the city should not have to return all the profit to the fair when the money is needed in other areas.
But you must remember we have too many capital fund needs throughout Oklahoma City that are dire needs, urgent needs that we're looking at every day, involving collapsed sewer lines, water mains, streets, bridges, and this type of thing. That I think we ought to have the option to make it, where we ought to have an option to make the decision whether or not they go into new buildings out the fairgrounds, or whether we comply with maybe the request of a lot of citizens in Oklahoma City.
Frank says he's tired of letting the fair keep its profits while the city pays for the upkeep of the fair. He says last year Oklahoma City subsidized the fair by paying out $774,000. A new contract between the Fair Board and the city is not expected to come without hours more of debate. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Most bank robberies and savings and loan robberies are solved through informants and through people that are close to someone that committed the crime or have some information, however insignificant it may appear to them, that when pieced together can solve particular crimes. It's moved by the association of offering rewards. As you probably know, most bank robberies and savings and loan robberies are solved through informants and through people that are close to the experience in other areas has been that this kind of reward
Police came to JB's Easy Nights Tavern with 15 felony warrants. After a check of IDs, it was found that none of the suspects were there. However, 4 people were arrested, primarily for possession. Simultaneous raids throughout the area turned up 4 of the suspected drug dealers. That leaves 11 of the warrants outstanding, but the Midwest City Police Force still terms the raid a success.
Success based on numbers, no. Success based on arrest of dealers, yes. We still have 4 dealers on warrants that are in custody in jail now, and we have 4 additional people, of course, that were arrested. And so we did stop it for some time anyway.
Police are still looking for the 11 people named in the outstanding warrants. They say it's just a matter of time before they're brought in. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.
ERA supporters began arriving around 7 o'clock tonight. A quick look at the name tag shows they're coming from all over, especially the western states of our country. This evening's activities have been an opportunity for mixing and mingling and planning strategy for tomorrow's march at the Capitol. Entertainment by the group Friends of Tradition has sparked excitement among ERA supporters tonight, and dancing to the traditional folk music has brought everyone closer together with a positive attitude about tomorrow's plan of attack.
We was going on our way down there fishing, and then my son told me there was a body laying there. I said, no, that's probably a dummy. But then, you know, I walked up close and it was a body. You know, he was laying face down. When I really discovered the body, I just got in my car and went up to the store. There was a police officer up there, and I just told him I think I found a body. You know, so many of them came back down there.
Thank you for coming. Norm?
The Bureau of Prisons director formally made the announcement at a news conference. Norman Carlson said El Reno was chosen as one of 2 deportation centers because the federal prison is already located there, and that would save the federal government from buying more land and duplicating staff.
We already have the nucleus of a staff. We would not have to have another warden, for example. We would not have to hire a number of other department heads because we could simply utilize the already existing management staff of the institution. So most of the people we would hire would be line staff, the correctional officers, if you want to use that term. And the majority of those, I anticipate, would come from the local community.
The dormitory-like buildings would be built adjacent to the prison. They would be completely separate with high barbed wire fences for security. Construction would start in August of next year and take 2 years to build. Only 1,000 illegal aliens, mostly from the south border, would be kept there at any given time, and then usually for only a week or so. The federal people say the deportation center would be a positive influence on the community of El Reno. For one thing, 300 new jobs would be created, and it would be a boost to the economy since $19 million would be spent to construct it. So they tried to sell those positive points to community leaders. Many of them were fearful Cubans and other illegal aliens would end up being housed there. They weren't quite sure what effect the center would have on their community.
Will it rely on the institution's medical facilities or the public medical facilities?
If an alien is successful in opposing this deportation, then where does he go once the immigration officials decide that he should not be deported?
I've checked with each of those communities personally and can assure you, and I'll give you the name.
The community leaders seem satisfied with the answers they got. The final decision comes from Congress, and indications are the deportation center will be approved. Bellashaw, Action 4 in El Reno.
We appreciate all of you taking.
The majority of farmers in central Oklahoma are getting their equipment ready for wheat harvest. Brian Sanders is no exception. Sanders farms with his father-in-law, Gene Wishon, about 11 miles southeast of Cashin. You've probably heard the cliche, it's a dirty job, but it's got to be done. Well, that saying fits this situation to a T.
Well, you have to grease your combine, check for worn parts, and change the oil. Just basically make sure it's lubricated and everything's in working condition.
Is it a problem if it isn't?
Yeah, it is. When you start cutting, you don't ever want to stop unless you just have to.
Because of all the rain, Sanders says it'll be about a week to 10 days before he puts this big machine in the field. He isn't optimistic about this harvest. The rain, plus all the flooding on his land, did extensive damage to this year's crop. Ben McCain, Action 4, 11 miles southeast of Cashin.
The authority for the promulgation of rules governing any matter or practice related purchasing director. 70 other aspects of purchasing and acquisition and amounts both above and below the $750 limit are numbered by the notary. My commission, Board of Public Affairs, currently in effect, or such items are so available but may not be purchased or delivered within a reasonable.
An Oklahoma City viewer writes in and says, this couple's divorce has been finalized now for over a year. Now the wife wants to reopen the case on the grounds of adultery. She discovered the husband was living with another woman after filing for the divorce while he was waiting for the 6-month period to run so he could marry the woman. Can a finalized divorce in Oklahoma be reopened? Reopening a finalized divorce must be done within 6 months from the date of the decree, unless the divorce was procured by fraud or by mistake of the court clerk. With regards to fraud, the courts are reluctant to modify or vacate a decree of divorce unless there is clear and satisfactory evidence that a fraud was committed. Although cohabitation with another woman during the 6-month period is adultery, it is not fraud, and therefore the judgment probably would not be reopened. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A viewer writes in and says, I was recently released from the hospital. I've taken a new job, and in order to obtain health insurance offered by my employer, I need insurance forms filled out by my doctor. The doctor refuses to fill out the forms until I pay him the $95 I still owe on my hospital bill, plus $25 for filling out the forms. Can he legally get away with this? The physician who treated you has a right to collect payment for the services he rendered, and if you fail to pay, you can be subject to a civil suit brought by the doctor to collect on his bill. As for the insurance forms, you have a right to that information, and it should be made available to you. However, if the doctor's services are required to complete the forms, he can charge a reasonable fee. Perhaps you should negotiate with your doctor and offer at least a partial payment on your debt in return for his cooperation on your present dilemma. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
Employees at the Oklahoma County building are shoulder to shoulder, and officials say the only solution is a new building. With rising crime, there is more paperwork and less room to get the job done. Oklahoma County commissioners have hired architects to design a justice center that would accommodate more workers and also be able to help ease the prisoner population at the county jail by building a detention area for juveniles. County officials say the fact is they have just a few choices to help ease the overcrowding situation.
It appears to me that there's only two choices. One, we expand in the immediate area, or we say, okay, we'll move the whole thing away from here. To me, it's inconceivable of thinking of moving the entire complex anywhere else.
If the Justice Center is built, the old Center Theater would have to be torn down. The Urban Renewal Authority had hoped to put another office building in that space, but will meet with commissioners to reach a compromise. The idea is to build structures that will go along with downtown Oklahoma City's style. Whatever is decided, it's almost certain the theater will have to go. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in downtown Oklahoma City.
Interest rates and inflation. You want to go to Argentina, they don't even quote interest rates by the day anymore. They quote them by the hour. They have 110% inflation a year. Rather go off to some far-off island that no one ever heard of. I can trade places with. It's a very remarkable land, President, that we have now, and we're going to do it together.
Well, I was surprised especially that it came in the midst of such a critical situation in the Middle East. I would have thought the timing would have been handled a little differently, but on the other hand, we've known for a long time that there were strains within the administration and between Haig and others. It would be an understatement to say that he has an adequate ego and that he's somewhat abrasive to work with. And I think there have been problems ever since the assassination attempt and his famous "I'm in charge here" statement at the White House. Without being unkind to him, frankly, I think making a trade of Al Haig for George Schultz is not a bad trade at all.
Two strawberries. Most people would agree if liquor by the drink was to become legal in Oklahoma, it probably would have a better chance in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and that's what the Tulsa and Oklahoma City Chambers of Commerce is hoping. A petition is being worked up now to have liquor by the drink on a local option basis in the two cities. What the organization calls Sooner Alcohol Narcotics Education, or SANE, says it will fight the local option drive, because if passed, the liquor laws would be unenforceable.
We wind up with the same problem they have in states that have local option. You can't control it within that. It'll be jumping across the county lines, bootlegging, all that sort of thing comes along with it. So when you bring about a local option of this type, you bring a lot of additional problems with it, law enforcement specifically.
SANE says even though the push for liquor by the drink is in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, the entire state will become involved, because all voters must decide if the law can be different for certain cities. And SANE feels Oklahoma as a whole will keep the liquor laws it has. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Their ideology teaches them that women are not persons, that women are second-class citizens, that women are oppressed by men, and therefore not able to accomplish anything unless they have this magic thing called ERA.
I don't have a very good answer for why the President does not support the Equal Rights Amendment. I know that he did at one time when he was governor of California, and he changed his mind, as some people have. And I've always been rather distressed by that fact. But beyond that, you'd have to ask him.
Long-range cameras spotted the Columbia on its return from space over the California coast, traveling more than 3,000 miles an hour. President and Mrs. Reagan watched from the edge of the runway. So did more than 400,000 other people on a beautiful 4th of July. The landing worked like everything else on this fourth flight of the space shuttle, just as it was supposed to and right on time. The landing concluded the test phase of the shuttle program. From now on, all flights to space will be for government agencies or private companies, which have rented the cargo area on board. The secret military payload carried on this flight remained hidden behind the closed payload bay doors. Computers brought the shuttle down to an altitude of 2,500 feet. Then Commander T.K. Mattingly took the controls for a perfect touchdown. The Columbia landed on the concrete strip at Edwards Air Force Base, the first time it has touched down on a hard surface. NASA officials had hoped to land with a crosswind, but Mother Nature did not allow that.
Columbia, Houston, welcome back to Earth. That was beautiful.
The Reagans greeted Mattingly and pilot Henry Hartsfield as they emerged from the spacecraft. Then President Reagan delivered a speech. Many in the space program had hoped he would promise more money. Instead, he only promised in a general way to keep the space program going.
We must look aggressively to the future by demonstrating the potential of the shuttle and establishing a more permanent presence in space.
Robert Bazell, NBC News, Edwards Air Force Base, California.
The other brother drove the car here to Northwest 10th and Portland. Police believe that sometime during the course of the drive, the man turned to the two women and opened fire. It was he who called the police asking for help. When officers arrived at the club, they found one woman dead. She had been shot 3 times, once in each leg and once through the back. The victim has been identified only as the suspect's brother's wife. The suspect also injured his own wife. She was shot once through the leg. She and her brother-in-law, who had been shot in the hand, were taken to Baptist Hospital, where both are listed in stable condition. Police had no trouble taking the suspect into custody. He will be charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. The weapon, a large caliber .38, is now evidence. It was found on the blood-stained front seat of the family car. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.
The vice president touched down bearing good economic news. He said the recession has bottomed out. Bush, along with his wife Barbara, attended a reception at the Skirvin Plaza, where over 200 people had paid over $200 to hear him speak. Bush lambasted the Carter administration for high interest rates.
To listen to Fritz Mondale, the economic policies of the Carter administration represented the good old days. Got a great cheer from that audience on that. But I couldn't help but think of what I just said, that the inflation rate when they entered office was 4.8%. And when they were thrown out of office by the voters in Oklahoma, leading the pack, and 42 other states, inflation had tripled to 12.4%.
5th District Congressman Mickey Edwards, of course, hopes that people will take interest in what Bush is saying and give him a strong momentum to start his campaign for re-election. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Skirvin Plaza.